Okay, we're going live to you now for the very first time from our cottage here in Dale Abbey in the East Midlands of England. As you can see, it's extremely rural. We got nothing but sheep and cows and dogs and trees and birds, none of which do we have in Manhattan. Yesterday, as you probably noticed, Macron won the French election with a great sigh of relief in most of the civilized and educated world. I'm not sure about Washington, D.C., but as I said, it was the civilized and educated world. And here in Britain, one would hope that Macron's victory may breathe life back into the Remainers, and maybe this whole Brexit nightmare will come to an end. It's hard to say. Anyway, I'm back. Yesterday, I was in, the last couple of days, I was in Galway, Ireland, where I was a speaker at MojoCon, which is the Mobile Journalist Conference. This is the third year that it's been run, and for me, it's an enormous sense of satisfaction. As you probably know, I started the whole VJ thing, or at least the commercial end of it, about, 30 years ago, and in the first 10 years, people just thought I was nuts. And I think many people still do, but it certainly has caught on. And so to walk through a room of 500 or 600 journalists, all of whom subscribe to this, and 30 booths of vendors who are trying to sell us stuff, and networks that are beginning to pick up on it, is an enormous sense of satisfaction. I was asked to be a speaker there, and the topic of my speech was, is journalism dead? Needless to say, I think it is. At least the kind of journalism that we once understood to be the basis of how journalism worked. And the way that worked was, when I was starting, you went to journalism school if you were lucky or dumb enough to pay Columbia University, and as I did, and then you went and got a job, and I ended up at a job ultimately at CBS News producing Sunday Morning, which is still on the air and still pretty much looks like it did before, and that were the only options that you had. And in those days, networks and newspapers made a lot of money, and they paid their employees a fair salary, and that was how it worked. You made the content, you worked for them, they advertised against the content, they gave you money, and that was the end of it. The arrival of the internet broke that model forever. If you look at Facebook, there are everyone contributing to Facebook right now. I'm not getting paid for it. Nobody who contributes to Facebook gets paid for it, but Facebook goes out and takes the content that they get for free, and then they sell advertising against it with no cost to them. Facebook is not paying any of us, and they make a fortune. Mark Zuckerberg is worth, $40 billion, $35 billion, which is kind of pornographic in many ways because essentially they're stealing our stuff. What effectively happened in the journalism business was, in the 1990s and the 2000s, was that the geeks who made these websites, who knew nothing about journalism, stole our business, because the business of the internet is to collect information, process it, and then sell advertising against it. Well, geez, that's the business of a newspaper. That's the business of a television station. But the internet came along, and these guys all grabbed all the equity and everything else and left us with nothing. I don't have to tell you. I have friends that I went to journalism school with at Columbia, very smart. There are 6 or 7 Pulitzer Prize winners in my class alone, but the vast majority of journalists can't get a job. And if they have jobs, they're going to get fired from their jobs, and they can't hold on to their jobs, and all work becomes temp now, and everybody's hanging by threads, and the thing is criminal. It's criminal because journalists, the internet is journalism. It's just been shifted over to be owned by the geeks from the computer section, the math department, the least journalists in the world, and those of us who actually did the thing and invented the thing and lived and breathed for it have been left out in the cold. Now that's a really serious problem. Our fault was that we didn't pay attention. There's a guy named Michael Moritz who was a journalist for Time magazine, and if you remember the cover where they did Person of the Year, I think they called it Man of the Year then, the Man of the Year that year was a computer. Well, Moritz was the reporter who worked for Time magazine and wrote that article. And right after he wrote the article, he thought, geez, something really big is happening here. And he quit his job at Time magazine, and he went out to Silicon Valley, and he went to work for Sequoia. Sequoia, if you don't know it, is one of these big venture capital firms. And of course, they were just getting started because the web was just getting started. And so Moritz was an initial investor in Yahoo, Google, PayPal, Zappos. You've heard of all of these things, and he has a net worth today, theoretically, of $3.5 billion, so Forbes said when they published the Forbes list. The same week Ford published the Forbes list, another one of these lists came out that listed worst careers for 2016. And the number one worst career for 2016 was newspaper journalist. Number 2 was tree logger, which we got a lot of some here. And number 3 was a broadcast journalist. This is the juxtaposition between the Forbes list over here, listing these billionaires who've made all their money out of this reconstruction or theft of journalism, and all the poor journalists over here who've got now what turns out to be the worst jobs in the world, makes us think that maybe we should be arranging ourselves in a different way. And this is really what I talked about when I was at MojoCon, because the mobile journalist, the idea of doing video on iPhone, is the definitive personification of the shift in the industry. As I said, when I went to work for CBS News, you had to go to work for CBS because broadcast cameras cost $60,000 or $80,000, and you couldn't. I don't know why that thing's coming up. And you couldn't broadcast yourself. You had to go to CBS, who owned the FCC license. And that's the only way you got on the air. Well, of course, these iPhones, which I'm broadcasting to you now on, have changed everything. They shoot, they edit, they cut. They are a broadcast network in and of themselves. This is an opening for us to break the bond with these dying businesses and to take control of the internet and steal it back from the computer geeks. Now, how do we do that? First of all, we have to own the content. The stuff that we're making here, I'm not making this as an employee of CBS. You don't have to make your stuff as an employee of CBS or of the New York Times. You can make it and own it. And then if you own it, you can license it. Well, the need for content is vast. Every single website, whether it's Facebook or some department store thing or TripAdvisor, all these people need content. And right now, we're giving it away to them, and that is a dumb thing to do. You make it, you own it, you license it to them, and you collect fees. This is how everybody else works. I wrote a piece today in the Huffington Post, which I gave them for free, which you should take a look at and read it if you can. It's called The Billionaire Journalist. It's really about this guy Moritz, but more significantly, it's about how we could redesign the industry of journalism. If you were smart enough to go to journalism school, you are smart enough to have gone to law school. And if you went to law school, you would have joined a partnership. That's how lawyers arrange themselves. They become partners, and then they collect their collective knowledge and their collective abilities, and then they license their ability to manage the law to all the people who will pay them for it, and they have equity in the firm. Journalists are in the business of managing content. We don't live in a world of laws, fortunately, because they're boring. We live in a world of content. Almost everything we do now is content related. And as journalists, we are content creators and content managers. And therefore, we should seize on that, and instead of going to work for X, Y, or Z for 3 weeks, or a contract here, or going to work for CNN and then getting thrown out after 10 years, I mean, this is what's going to happen. If you're working for a newspaper or a television station, you ultimately are going to get thrown out, which is criminal. And you don't own anything. Nobody's giving you equity in CNN for giving your lifeblood to make the thing a success. They give you like a party and a gold watch. At the BBC, they used to give you a video and a bowl of sausages and say, you were great and hooray for you, and then get the hell out of here. So that's the end. That's where it's all headed, and it's a bad ending. But if you work for a law firm, you have equity in the law firm. We should have journalist firms. We should all get together, we should pool our abilities, and we should own the content and license it to the New York Times and CBS and Facebook and PBS and anybody else who wants to license it, but we will retain the rights. And therefore, over a period of 10 years or 30 years, which is how long I've been in the business, you would have a pretty good library of content, which has a lot of value. As it is, I don't know anything. I mean, I own my companies, but I don't own any of the content I spent my life making, which is kind of tragic. Anyway, that was the speech I gave at MojoCon. I don't know how it went down with them. I mean, there was like a mixed, reaction. Some people cheered and some people said, you don't know what you're talking about. And the problem is that journalists have this dyed-in-the-wool thing glorifying poverty. I mean, look at every journalist in every movie. The guy's got raggedy clothes. He lives in a crap apartment. He's got a crap car. He's generally got a crap marriage. But he's in search of the truth all the time. But he never thinks about making money. It's time for us as journalists to think about making money, about having equity, about owning our content. And we can do it. We don't have to be such schmucks like we were when the internet came along and walk away from the thing and go, well, it's too bad. I guess we're screwed now. So get your act together and, of course, join the VJ.com, which is why I'm doing this. And we will explain to you how you can do this and how you can make some real bucks here. And there's no reason you shouldn't be able to do that. So there we are, and it looked, the internet worked, even though I think with PlusNet I'm only getting 1.2 megabits per second. Nobody else in the village is around now, so I think I'm the only one online here. But I'm going to try this again tomorrow, so tune in and we'll have another rant from the lovely Bucolic countryside, or maybe we'll just go out and hang out with the dogs. So I'll see you later.